this is an instance of a period of time, maybe a year longer, where I was not so in control of my picture making, and it felt very frustrating. And it was only, I wrote about this in the book, so like it's certainly no secret or anything, but there was a person who had to leave my life, and I realized that too late that I didn't want him to leave my life, and so I felt like really sort of discombobulated. I was just really not in a space where I was like connecting with the world very well. And so for a long period of time, I was making these pictures where I just was like, everything's off. Like the distances are off, the edges are off, the forms are off. Like nothing made sense to me.
You have these wide open spaces using Central Illinois as kind of your subject per se, exploring the same space. But this time it seems like you're exploring time, and this was this series about Christmas. And I read a great review about it once again on Urbanaut. And I want to kind of take a look through that, and we'll jump into another project after that, and then we'll get into some of our later conversation. But sure. Can you take me through what you were thinking about in that project? It had what does Christmas mean to you? That time frame. Where did this project come from, and how did you put it together?
Yeah, so actually, Christmas itself has almost nothing to do with this. But it's a good question. So this book is called Christmas Day, Bucks Pond Road. This is the cover, as you can see now, hopefully. And it was all shot on one day. I did not that morning, that morning intend to go out and make a book, and nor did I think that day, or even looking through contact sheets, or even a year later, that I had a book. But yeah, it was all made on one day, and it is made on this road. So here's another thing I'd like to talk about is like the way I talked about local objects, and I may talk about this in relation to other projects. Is like as I mentioned, I'm trying to be objective about what I'm making, the subjective things I'm making as photographs, and trying to this is an idea from Wallace Stevens. I kind of said this in a different way before, but every photograph is sort of you're plotting yourself against the world. You're finding some point between you and the world, and sometimes sometimes you and the world seems like really close, right? And you feel good, and then sometimes the world seems really far apart, and you feel really distant from the world. But that's okay, because you write a poem, you make a picture, you do whatever, you're plotting those points between you and the world. And sometimes if things are cool, you're kind of in control of that a little bit, and I would say that, like, in Local Objects and some of the other books I made before Bucks Pond Road, I felt like I was in control of that. I was like, okay, here's where I am in relation to the world. This is an instance of a period of time, maybe a year longer, where I was not so in control of my picture making, and it felt very frustrating. And it was only, I wrote about this in the book, so like it's certainly no secret or anything, but there was a person who had to leave my life, and I realized that too late that I didn't want him to leave my life. And so I felt like really sort of discombobulated. I was just really not in a space where I was like connecting with the world very well. And so for a long period of time, I was making these pictures where I just was like, everything's off. Like the distances are off, the edges are off, the forms are off. Like nothing made sense to me. But I was like, I don't know what else to do. I just got to keep burning film, right? Like that's all I can do. And so, so this walk and this set of pictures occurred during that time. And so I'll start to walk you through. The cover has a very close-up picture of a tree that has been maimed, sort of. It's still alive, still living to this day, but there's some wires close to it, so they have to come in every now and again, just like really just chop parts of it off so that the tree doesn't interfere with the wires. But we'll move into it a little bit here. The book does start with a picture of sort of rubber, on the road, whether it was a peel out of a car or whether brakes had been hit really hard. You can see, you'll see where, a car has either stopped or started. And basically I used that there because this is the only picture in the book I wanted there to be any noise in, quite a loud sound. And then, the book goes to its, cover page, its title page.
Is it like an image, and like a still image in a book can have a noise?
This one does for me. Listen, no, comparatively to the rest of the book. I mean, when I say this, most people kind of do get that feeling of that whatever just happened, and again, it didn't just happen. So the noise is in the past, but
interesting.
Listen, I may not go to the mat for that idea, but I think we can evoke it a little bit, so,
no, I agree with you. I wanted to pull it out.
Yeah, pictures are a little noisier, or that have time in them or whatever. And the rest of the book is really silent, in my opinion. But after the title page, we go to just a pretty simple picture of some water, and but it's kind of blocked, like the tree that is in front of us is sort of blocking it, but the water comes all right up. And I talk a lot about my own pictures. I talk with students about edges, and when a picture does or doesn't give you a firm place to stand, I think that's a really important thing. And this picture has water come all the way up to the bottom. Obviously I was on dry land, but the picture is not necessarily. And so these are all the kinds of things I think about and work through. Next picture, and as I told you, and this does not make me uncomfortable. I'm glad to say this. It's hard to describe these pictures in much prose because I would just keep saying trees, over and over again, and dead leaves. Right. And nothing dramatic is going to happen in prose language for this, in general. I'm on a third picture that, again, would not have any description different from the previous one. A little bit closer up, a little bit more depth of field in the next photograph. Now, here
at the exact same time, this is winter time, so the trees do not have leaves on them.
Yeah.
It's clear that it's winter. There's almost a frigidness to it. Cold, a little bite as you walk down the street. You can almost feel it. I've been in places like this, and so when there's a bunch of leaves, you can almost feel the color, not in black and white, but sometimes you almost project it almost in the same way you project sound. So it gives me that feeling here, and it's going to lead me to my next question. I'm going to let you kind of take us through a few more pictures.
Okay, yeah, great. Well, because I do want to show you, I did, it's not just nothing, because there's still it's important for me the books to have things in them that are have a logic and but the photograph we're looking at now, it's a relatively shallow depth of field, but there was a kind of a vine or some sort of plant that created a V image or V situation. And what I found then, though, there was a picture that I made over the water in which there was a similar sort of elegant V shape in a much bigger branch. So right now I'm showing back and forth between them on the video, but you can kind of see retrospectively I'm looking for sort of patterns and clues in the land. I'm going to move forward just to show you a couple of other ways that I did that, because it's, like I said, it's important to me that there be so in this spread, we start to see a big kind of clump of trees off in the distance. This was sort of my central thing because it just was this big hulking mass. And I was just interested in it. And the book kind of comes closer to it as we get through some pictures, kind of faints away from it and then goes towards it. But it becomes a more important presence. And you see, I still take a fair amount of time to get there, but even in the final maquette, getting close to this, there were probably 4 or 5 of this mass. We got it down to maybe just 2 or 3 as we get up closer to it. But this picture this is really the central picture. We're looking at a picture where it's just some foreground, and then sort of a copse of trees, half dead and half alive, but that are kind of just a big mass. And listen, without getting too metaphor-y, I was just at this point in my life, there was these masses that sort of were black holes. They were just sort of sucking in the energy that I had. And so this is a very awkward picture to me. And I wouldn't want to make pictures like this again. I can say, Or I'm going to show you a picture later that I really, this, for me, the picture that we're looking at now, it's kind of a bit of slanted road, a slanted pollard pole, and some trees. And like this picture is, for me, is a very, in general, it's a poor composition picture, but this is what I was doing then. And it became important to me now. And again, it's the kind of picture I don't make anymore, and I don't want to make anymore, but that's okay, because that was in the past. And I'll stop sharing there, because I'll tell you a little bit more. It's just like, so the picture all made in one day, you know, and it's a set of contact sheets, but it's a set of contact sheets from a whole year. And I was now finally, you know, I moved emotionally out of that space. I'm able to be a little bit more objective about all that stuff. I'm looking at it and saying, okay, well, maybe there's something to extract from this whole year's worth of contact sheets. I'm working on that, looking at it, you know, and then I see, you know, I make some work prints and stuff, and I look at that and I say, well, possibly the whole thing is in that day's wall, right? So, you know, like, because I do have students ask, well, how can you make a book in one day? And it's like, no, you know, like that the negatives happen to have been made in one day. That's not the thing. Like, I was a person who came to this situation from, you know, my whole life. You know, I was the person who made these pictures, and I was the person who looked at them for 2 years, you know, like afterwards, and like was just kind of looking and thinking about them. And that's what I extracted from this time in my life. That was the thing. And now the other thing is, what that means is, though, once I decided that I wanted to think of it as a book, there was no way to go back and reshoot any holes in it. A, because not even to get the light right and all that kind of stuff, but B, because how would I put myself back in that headspace? So it's like, well, it either is a thing on its own, you know, or it isn't. And, you know, and then so I made the maquette, and a lot of my friends, people said, hey, yeah, it's a thing. So, you know, then that's when we advanced it. But that's how, you know, when
I look at both of those series, especially, I feel like I'm finding thought. I'm feeling you think, and kind of exploring your thoughts through the photograph. And I keep going back to that title in reference to Christmas, because a lot of times, I know it's a tradition in the United States. A lot of us, especially if we're transplants that are living in different parts of the country, we all come back for that one moment, you know, to the family, to groups, familiarity, and we spend time with our family. And so, did that play a role in this series? Was that kind of involved, or am I playing too much into this and reading too far?
No, but you know, like, well, no, I don't think so. I definitely like that taps into it. The thing is like, the reason the title came about is like, this was even the days, I think I made the next, like, in Tumblr days, when I had a Tumblr, and I put up one of them, you know, before I knew it was I thought it was important, you know, or whatever you want to call it. And I just titled it Christmas Day, Bucks Pond Road, because that was just the facts on the ground. Yeah. You know, like, it wasn't meant to be like anything other than that. And then I was like, bum, bum, bum. Like, I was like, that has a nice little meter, right? Yeah, and in fact, a poet friend of mine later, when we made the book, he's like, your title is a poem. The meter is just perfectly right. You know, like, and that was just luck. But no, I mean, of course, there's these things about, you know, like, feeling connected or feeling disconnected on a holiday. Yeah. Of course, you know, for Americans, and Thanksgiving is even worse for some Americans, you know, like, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas is when we're supposed to be around the people we love. And when that's not the case, you know, like, that's, you know, a big deal. But I did want it to be, listen, what it does, it says time and place, you know, but in hopefully like a slightly artful way, you know, and I like that it's sort of factual, but that has a poetry to it, you know. So
if you could sum up that project with words, you know what I mean, and and kind of sum up your mentality, because I'm trying to get into your brain there. I felt a loneliness. I felt a separateness. I felt a contemplation there, and so I'm kind of curious to see what you would say, and how you would describe that.
Yeah, for sure. Because I know, and it's something, I'm glad you asked it, because I kind of meant to say this, but like, in other projects, I felt like I was sort of in control of the picture making. And this is the one, and it's hard to call it a project because it was sort of retrospective, you know, like but this was a time when I was not in control of the picture making in a way that I was used to being. You know, like like I said, the world and me were not matching up, and I was making pictures that just felt off and felt weird. Now I'm glad, once I kind of got some distance from that, looking back on it, I'm glad that I made the weird pictures. And so it was just a different exercise for me, like knowing myself better, like, and when you say, yeah, it's about thinking, and what I would even say, it's about more what I call like cognitive thought and not conscious thought. Like it's just this kind of moving around and like reacting and trying to make some sort of sense of things without even like getting to the level of narratizing it, or owning it sort of narratively. And then there were things like, here's a little like inside publishing thing, is like I showed the maquette to John Gossage, and he's like, great. And his one sort of criticism is like, he's just like, I don't like left-hand pictures alone, without, with blank light, because it feels like you're looking back. And I didn't tell them this at the time, but like, I was like, great, because I am a protagonist in this book who is constantly second guessing himself, who does not know his place in the world, who's always looking back and thinking, what did I mess up? What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? And how did I get myself into this place where I can't make sense of things? And it's just this, like the whole book, you kind of look at one thing, you spend 3 or 4 or 5 pictures on it, and then you lose it. And then you go to another thing. And then, that copse of trees that I mentioned, that was sort of the main thing you look at. We didn't get to the end of the book where there's a house where the protagonist sort of maybe sees something there, but then that disappears. And so, I think this is, and I don't think I'm the only person who's ever experienced this, after losing someone, it's like, we all just can't make sense of the world for a while. And, but this finally gave me a structural way to say, like, man, I'm glomming onto this idea. That doesn't work. Then I'll glom onto this idea. That doesn't work. And it's just this constant sort of trying to move ahead, but second guessing yourself, moving, the one step up, 2 steps back kind of cliche, which is true. You're just not doing what you want in the world. And so like, I'm really glad how the book sort of enacts that, that feeling. Anyway, long-winded answer to your question, but
no, it's wonderful. It's a lot of what I connected to, and sometimes I do connect to some photographs, but I learned a long time ago is once you put it out in the world, people are going to make of it what they're going to make of it, and in a lot of ways, it's very nostalgic for me because I'm in a big city now, and I look through that work, and I used to do the same thing. I just walk around, and especially on Christmas, just to get out of the house and away from people, and just spend some time with my camera and my thoughts, and so I really related to that project.